All right, it's time for a new episode of Go Talk. Today I have William Shi. Hi, William.
Hey Kevin, how are you?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm good.
So William is one of the first American Go professionals, right?
Yep. I became a pro along with Andy Liu at the first AGA protest.
Cool, cool. So I guess, well, let's just start from there. I guess when that came along, what made you decide you wanted to take the test and try and become a American Go professional or North American?
Actually, so I didn't have any plans of becoming a pro because there isn't that many opportunities here. So I figured um, that when the opportunity did come, I was like, I was just gonna give it a try. And at the time, I don't think I was seated very high on the players, so I didn't really have a idea of how it's gonna go, and I didn't really expect myself to win it.
Right.
So I just like I basically wanted to attend the event to try to see how I would do, but it turned out pretty well, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. So I guess congratulations on that. And so
Yep, thank you.
was it a pretty tough just to go through the whole thing or?
Um, the games are actually quite difficult because I actually had to play, I think, three games. There was the game, the format was very weird. So for the later rounds, you're allowed to lose a game because it was best out of three.
Hmm.
So as soon as I got into the later rounds where you're allowed to lose a game, I like started losing,
Oh,
and so all my games I had to like it was like 2-1. It wasn't like 2-0,
hmm.
you know. So in the end, I actually lost like three games in the tournament, which is pretty rare because
Right.
any more games you'll be eliminated.
Do you remember who you lost to?
I lost to first game. I lost to Yang Jing,
Uh-huh.
and then he was actually very strong at the time, but he was age maybe almost 40, but he was a very strong seven dan.
Okay.
And I like the first game, I pretty much lost.
Yeah.
There wasn't much chances. And the second game, I was really behind as well. But then somehow in the late game, he made a really big mistake, and so I came back and won that game,
Okay.
which was very lucky because it was like a really rare mistake. And in the third game, it was a very close game,
Hmm.
but I managed to win by I think a point and a half, which I got very excited. And then I think it was after that point that I was like, I really want to win this. And then so I think I cared a bit more after that point.
You said, "Oh, I can see the finish line, so like, let's go for it."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. At first, it was just like I'll just play,
Right.
my best. And then after that, I think I played Hugh Jang.
Hmm.
And although I lost one of the games, I was still confident.
Right.
And then in the end, I lost another game to Andy in the next round, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But that put me in the losers bracket, which I had to beat Gan
Hmm.
uh, to win.
So I guess what stuff, I mean, you don't have to go through everything, but like what things have you sort of done after becoming a Go professional in terms
Um,
of in the Go world?
I attended a couple events, so they said I could play in a lot of tournaments as a pro, especially pro tournaments.
Right.
So I decided to go to Korea for a summer because that summer I didn't really have much plans
Hmm.
and I have 4 months off. So I decided to go to one of the biggest dojan in Korea.
What was that like?
It was pretty good, and actually at the time there was I think two more players there studying from abroad. So there was Ben Lockhart,
Right.
and then there was also I think another player who's currently a European pro now,
Oh, wow.
actually, uh, Mateos Surma. So he was also there. So it wasn't that bad because
You had people to
I
talk to.
I had people to talk to and stuff, and also it helped, keep me a bit more motivated because I'm not all by myself, right?
Right, right. I mean, so this wasn't I mean, what's your background with Go? Because I mean, Did you study, like, how hard did you study coming up, like, when you were amateur level?
Mm, I was about, I think, 5 to 6 dan when I came to Canada, and this was when I was 9 years old.
Uh-huh.
So my foundation was, you know, built in China when I was study with a Go teacher for about amateur Go teacher for about 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And then I came here. There was like a really big local Go club
Right.
in Toronto, of course, and so there was actually 2 or 3 really good players, and I learned from them. And these are all like pretty old. They're like 30 to 40 year olds who sort of just retired. Well, they weren't professional Go players, but they had Go as a hobby, and they're really strong amateurs. So I learned from them, and I also do a lot of like homework. Do a lot of Sume Go. Um, Occasionally watch some bro games, but most of the studying at the time was a lot of it. It was like prepared by my dad, who really
Really?
cared. Yeah,
So you must be really happy that you're a Go, like, at least are an American Go professional, right?
yeah. He was surprised actually because I was pretty old at the time, and then
Yeah.
it was like a long time
Right.
since I came to Canada, and no one would expect this, right? So,
Yeah. So I mean, so then that means that when you went to Korea, that was like sort of your first time in that really focused environment, right?
um, yeah, basically, I don't think I have prior experience in a really like like a professional Go school kind of thing where you just study every day and just focus on being better at Go. And then
Right.
that was kind of a positive experience.
Was it a huge shock to you? Because I mean, I remember talking to Ming Ming about it, and she was just like, you wake up, you play a game, and then you do a lot of Go problems. I mean, and that's like
Mm,
almost every day. Was it a huge shock?
I expected it, and I think I took it better because I was at a later age and there wasn't that much pressure. Because most people who study there are trying to become pro, right?
Right.
And since I'm already a pro, I don't really have much pressure on me. I'm just trying to improve for my own sake, right? Whereas the kids, they don't even go to school, and this is kind of like their only way out,
Jeez.
which
Yeah.
puts a lot of pressure on them. But I really enjoyed it, and then it was kind of like a roller coaster ride sometimes because Go really can,
Yeah. Definitely.
can yeah, it can make you like sad at times if you're on losing streak or something like that.
Yeah. That's well. We're gonna talk about a bunch of stuff, I hope. But yeah, that's something I want to talk about, just because I mean that's a pro mentality, and
Hmm.
it's possible. But so I mean, you've done that, and after the 4 months, were you able to feel like you saw results, or was it just one of those like? Because I talked to Matthew Burrell about it once, and he said, right after he did that, he didn't feel like he saw results, but looking back, he was able to see results. How did you feel coming out of like
Um,
such intensive training?
you definitely get results, but it doesn't like I think Go strength doesn't really improve progressively. It's more or so
Like
you
just
improve at
balance?
interviews. I mean intervals, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I think at the time I was maybe at the same strength after a month and a half, but then it just kind of like jumped
right.
a bit more, and then it jumped again, because you're always playing a league, right? And then that's how you gauge how strong you are. And then so once I can see myself going up to the next league after maybe like a month and a half. I can see, oh, I'm actually improving, and I'm playing better players. So
That's pretty cool. And then, so you've done that. I think. Have you gone back to China to study at all?
no, I didn't have the chance to because it was Korea who sponsored the tournament, the
Mm-hmm.
first protest. So I figured I would go to Korea.
Okay. And then I know you've also gone with Andy for the Kansai Kiin's Sankei Cup, right?
Yep, that was this year.
And how was that?
Um, it was pretty good actually. Andy actually won all his games, which is a very, very good result. And I think it really shows that um, the strengths of American pros are actually catching up to those of the world.
Right.
Maybe not like American or top Korean pros, stuff like that, but
You can compete.
you can, yeah. I mean, within the Kansai Kiin, I think we could place about mid tier
Oh, really?
amongst them. And I mean, although I lost my games,
Mm-hmm.
Both of my games were really like winnable games. Whereas I played in other players before in like Korea, other pros.
Right.
Some of them are really strong, and during that time, I really felt I had no chance to win against them.
So I guess let's talk about that because I'm always curious. Um, I mean, in the pro world, your strength is like a 5 dan. It's sort of like the rank never goes down, right? It only can go up, and then that
Uh
doesn't
huh.
really show how much your effort you might be putting into it. So I mean, it's conceivable for any dan to beat any other dan at a pro level, right?
Yeah,
Like a 2 dan could be a beat a 5 dan pro.
that's very common
Yeah.
because it doesn't really matter nowadays.
So I mean, when you go against someone, what's it like when you're going against like a completely like a pro you've never seen before? Are you just like does it slowly creep in? Okay, this guy's a lot stronger than me, or is it just like a slow feeling that builds up?
Um, I usually don't think about my opponents before I play them, but you can usually tell by their strength by, if you hear their name before,
Oh, I
then
see.
obviously they're quite strong. And also if they look like they're like really young, like 18 or 20, they're probably going to be really strong pros.
So what's your attitude going in? Just I mean, do you just go in everyone thinking I mean you have to, but really thinking I'm going to win this and then just see how you do, or is it just feel your way as it plays?
I think I just try to play the best that I can. And I'm always quite confident with my play because
Hmm.
I think that's really how you should be play. You can't be really doubting your skill level.
Right.
So it's just in the end who makes less mistakes, right?
Right.
And at a pro level, it's just some players don't really make mistakes if they're really really strong. So
Yeah. And I guess what type of studying are you doing now? Are you just doing Sumego at home, or do you
um,
interact with a lot of other pros in terms of playing and getting better?
in terms of Go, I'm not a big fan of Sumego because
Not
uh,
many people
I,
are.
I've done a lot of them in the past. Yeah, and I mean, I still recommend it as the number one, I think, tool
Right.
for lower strength players. But personally, I can't be bothered to just do Sumego, right? And it's much more interesting for me personally to just enjoy the pro games on the side.
So you just replay programs?
Yeah, and occasionally play on Taijam.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
it's, that's about you know. There's
So,
not
yeah,
I'm
go.
not that there's not I'm not like spending 10 hours, 5 hours, or even like 3 hours a day to study Go. It's just more of like a personal
Right.
hobby at the moment.
That's pretty cool, though. I mean, yeah, I do remember with the Sumego. I
Wait,
remember,
hold on. I think my mic died.
and we're back. Small technical difficulties, but we're back. But so yeah, I guess with the whole like keeping up, I do remember Wang Chen from this year's Go Congress. I asked him if he'd bothered, and he's like, I had a lifetime of doing Go problems, so I don't really bother with that anymore. So I totally understand. But so a lot of what you're doing now is it's more just seeing how other people are playing and just like seeing like sort of how they react to certain situations more than just like you like playing as many games as possible.
Um, right now, I don't really see myself as a professional competitor in Go, right?
Oh, I see.
So, I mean, you have whatever sport it is, say basketball, you know, swimming. Yeah, there's only really rarely do you have the people who are really competing internationally,
Hmm.
who are doing it for a living, right?
Right.
Most of the people who play at a high level at any sport,
Hmm.
they don't have the chance to really be in the top, right?
Right.
Because you have there's a lot of pressure at the top to win, and also it's not something where you can just say, if I practice 10 hours a day, then I'll we'll win, right?
Right.
And so personally, that's too much of a like if you're not at the top, most players wouldn't put all the eggs in one basket, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
Go it's more fun for me, and a lot of other players will agree that it's more fun if you just treat it as a personal kind of something you enjoy on the side, right?
Right.
And of course, getting better is an important aspect of it, but if you can do that, without focusing too much on that aspect, if you just improve naturally, I think that's what most players will like, right?
Right.
They don't want to, purposely study every day and pressure themselves to improve.
Hmm.
I mean, that makes the game not that much fun anymore.
It's a
Right?
lot of pressure. I mean, yeah, I know Stephanie talked about that when I interviewed her about it. She was like, like every game she plays, it's a really strong pressure to win where she's always counting and like really focusing on the game. And just when the focus is, I mean, if you're an active professional, the one thing to do is to win. So yeah, I can understand that. Let's also talk about the games you played between, I think it was you, Andy, someone from Europe, and you guys played against Lee Sedol, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a few years back. I think at least one or two. Uh, so I mean, not many chances do you get. You don't get many chances to play Lee Sedol. So first of all, I mean, what things did you take away from playing against Lee Sedol?
It's sort of like you realize how far away they are, but yet they're kind of like really close to you, because we really felt that we could have won one of the games,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you realize that, oh, they're really strong. They're like this godlike figure in Go, right? And you're like, wow, I'm definitely not gonna win. But then when you play, you realize some of their moves, they're not totally unexpected. You can expect where they're gonna play, and also sometimes you may even have the edge in some things, because you realize that even those figures also make these mistakes, right?
Right. And
And I think
are those things you see in the game or like in review?
it's in the game as well, because I remember one of my games. It was actually one of the, I think, reverse Komi or no Komi games, where I actually played really well,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually had kept a small lead. But in the end, I think I was just really nervous, and the time was really strict, and so it all boils down to who is able to make less mistakes, right?
Right.
And in the end, what I realize is that they, even Lee Sedol will make mistakes. It's just that overall, I still make more mistakes than him, and that's why I'll lose the game. So
Interesting.
it's not like they're perfect. He's a perfect Go player. That's what I realized.
Right. So I mean, so yeah, because I remember, I mean, for me at the level I'm at, like there's still a feeling that if I place against someone, even if someone will play a move that just completely blows me out of the water, but it's nice to hear that you you're at a strength that you can at least feel like he'll make. You can still see the inner workings where it doesn't feel like it's a complete shock. So that's pretty cool. I mean, so how many games were you able to play against them? Like you personally?
I think I personally played 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the games was I had a really good game, and I actually didn't lose by that much that game. I think 3 points, but it was reverse Comey, I think, or
Right.
or not, or just no Comey. But and the other game was actually with two stones, and that was the later games. And I think at that point I was kind of disappointed with myself with my first game,
Right.
and I think we were all pretty nervous,
Right.
and but today I think if we were able to play again, even I think Andy would also tell you that two stones we'll have a really good chance, of course.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I mean if you think about it as a Go player, when you're a Go player and you're young and your approach to the game and the pressures, and as you mature as a Go player, like how you're going to approach the game is definitely going to change. I mean, do you feel like you've changed as a Go player, like in terms of how you're approaching the game as you've gotten older,
I
like just
think it's
mentally?
just as I get older, I feel a bit more confident
Mm,
as I approach the games. And also, once you become I think the pro experience really helped me just realize that you're not that far off from other pros, because when you're an amateur, you always think of pros as this, these players that are just like a great level ahead of you.
Mhm.
But once I just crossed that barrier, and it wasn't that hard.
Mhm.
It made me realize, oh, they're actually not that unbeatable, right? And
Right.
I mean, I've also had experiences. Me and Andy both beat pros before, and I think that actually improved our strength. Just knowing that, it made us stronger mentally, knowing that we're pros as well.
Right.
That we're supposed to be able to compete on the same level as the other pros,
Cool.
and so that helped us have a better mindset in approaching the game.
That's pretty good. I mean, how often have you met like have you played any pros or met anybody go wise that just when you play them you're like, "Oh, this guy's really really strong." Or is it still manageable?
Right now, I think anyone I play, it's really manageable.
That's
I
good.
mean, even against really strong players, I feel like there's always a chance, right?
Right.
So, if you ask me to play against like Lee Sedol today, I would still be confident that I wouldn't just get completely destroyed, right?
Right. That's pretty good. I mean, yeah, the cool thing is, I mean, and we'll talk about it in a second with because I mean there's a Ke Jie Lee Sedol match coming up in a few days. But and I think by the time this drops, it'll already pass. But it's interesting seeing like even Myungwon Kim look at their games and while he's doing commentary, like just how he views the game and how they still push through and can still, you know, surprise a pro. And
Uh huh.
for an amateur of any level, I mean, like to see that happen is like it's beyond our expectations. But it's cool to see how you feel about it. Um, are there any Go players now that you particularly follow, or just think, oh man, that guy, I should follow what he does?
Um, because I've trained in Korea, most of the things that I've learned
Hmm.
sort of follow the Korean style of play.
What would that style be?
I think it's just focused more on, I think, territory
Oh, okay.
and just playing very, very, they always tell you to play the best move,
Mm,
not like the prettiest move or the move that you have intuition with.
mm,
Unless, of course, it's like a blitz, right? But
yeah.
they always tell you to, to read, right? To always, make sure you read a couple steps ahead in the variation and make sure this is the best move. Because once you're at I think, at a strong level where you can think for yourself, you realize that the textbook moves don't really matter anymore. In the end, it all boils down to your reading, right?
Right.
Even in the easiest sequences, you have to read and make sure that it's the best sequence. And so that's why I think in a lot of pro games today, you don't see the typical, uh, Joseki or like,
Yeah, a lot of things just seem.
or the common shapes, right? You just play the best move, and that's what I was taught in Korea, I think.
So was that? I mean, there's an interesting thing I've heard, and I talked to, and I didn't realize this, and my teachers talked to me about it, and Ming, I've talked with her about it. How Go is sort of changed even now, where it is sort of the best move and a lot of heavy reading. I mean, is that different than how you were, I guess, trained or raised to learn Go in the very beginning?
I think in the beginning, you always learn from the basic shapes. The
Hmm.
fundamental patterns don't change.
Right.
But things like the ladder, stuff like that won't change, right? But there are certain cases where it's like, you know, like the one space jump may not always be the best way to escape.
Ah, I see.
You can have other options, right? You can even stuff you normally wouldn't think of, especially what our textbook bad, like things like bad shapes,
Hmm.
right?
Even like an
The
empty triangle
textbook
has a.
teaches you this is not a good shape because of this. But in the actual game, you might find that it's a very, very good move and very practical move, right?
Yeah, I've actually had that feeling. It it's interesting for me because it cycles in and out where first it was like, oh well, you have to follow this because it's Joseki, and then you realize, well, you don't have to follow it just because it's Joseki, and it like goes in and out because I remember talking with other pros about that, and there's like there are certain things that openings or how things interact with each other, like that's just the easy. This is just how it goes. There's not they haven't really tried to find something better, and it's interesting how mentalities can come in and out of it. I mean, like there are certain openings now where it's like this Joseki will go with this Joseki no matter what. There's not really many other things. Do you see that sometimes?
I see that a lot of time, and I think a lot of people don't like the fact that things are so different
Really?
because it's harder to understand, right?
Yeah.
Because before you would just follow the he played a Joseki here, you understand the game, but sometimes you just be like, oh, why is he playing that, right? It's just completely impossible to understand unless you are in his mind and
Mm.
you're reading what he's reading, right?
Right.
But also, that makes it more fun because I think you put more effort into looking at their games. Whereas
Mm.
before, you would just, glance over the game, just fast forward the game. Oh, these are familiar shapes, you know.
Yeah.
But now, if you look at a pro game, you really have to put effort and understand what they're thinking. And I think that really helps you improve.
Oh, interesting. I've never thought of it. So is that if you were going to replay a program, that's sort of what you're doing too?
Yeah. So if I were to say, look at the game that's going to happen in a couple of days, I will probably not just glance over it. I'll follow along and read the moves and see why they're playing that way.
Mm.
And I can pretty much guarantee that the game is going to be unconventional, right? And so it wouldn't be the same as, playing a game from maybe 10 years ago where a lot of the things you have seen in textbooks and is much, much easier to understand.
Yeah, definitely. That's pretty cool. Do you have any predictions for the game that's going to happen, Ke Jie versus Lee Sedol? No one's going to lose.
I'm personally a fan of Lee Sedol.
Yeah?
And I think Ke Jie is actually he's like he's like a genius, right, in Go.
How
But
so?
also, I mean, he's also needs to prove himself a bit more
Mm.
because he's pretty hyped up actually everywhere right now,
Yeah, he said
especially in
something.
China, where I've just been to China to play a tournament actually,
Yeah.
and he was actually there and he was really hyped up. But I think he needs to prove himself a bit more before we can officially say, oh, here's a new era
Right.
for him. Because if you look at the really successful players, they all had to prove themselves, right?
Right.
You just simply by not just winning games, but to accomplish to have more championships under their belt, stuff like that.
Right, definitely. Just saying you're the greatest doesn't mean anything if you don't have like the record to prove it or something to show for it.
Yeah, and I mean, all champions are not just one time.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
they they win multiple times, and I think Ke Jie has won two already.
Hmm.
But if you compare that to just there has been quite a few who have had two championships. I think Guli has like seven.
Mm.
Even Kong Jie had like three, and Lee Sedol, of course, I think has above 10, and Yi Chenghao has like something like 15 or 18.
Right.
So he still has a long way to go. And I think it's much harder right now
Mm.
when there's so many strong players, but you can't really give him too much credit,
Right.
when he's still this young, right? You can say, um, he has a lot of potential, but in a couple of years, if he's still that player with a lot of potential, it sort of makes you wonder, oh, where did all this when is all this potential going to come to fruit, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's pretty cool. How did the so what was this Chinese tournament that you went for?
It was actually like a under 21 tournament,
Okay.
and so it happens every year in China in Hangzhou, and then I had to go through a qualification here,
Oh.
but it wasn't that difficult, and so I was selected to go to China to play in this.
Mm.
and it was like single elimination. But in the end, Ke Jie actually lost to a Korean player,
Oh wow.
a young, really young Korean player, Lee Dong Hyun.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that just shows you that Go is always dynamic, and you can't just keep on winning, and always be winning.
So yeah, I guess now's a good time to talk about the concept of losing. I mean, how do you usually react to when you lose a game, or how do you feel, and how do you usually get over them? It be it just one game, or maybe a streak of two or three or more, if God forbid that happened. But
I think Go is like a competition, like everything else, and
hmm.
so for most viewers, if you haven't competed at the highest level in Go, if you just look somewhere else and do something in your life where you just if it's not going well, say like you do swimming or something, and you just keep you're not having great results no matter how hard you try. That's is that's probably the most frustrating thing you can experience.
Right,
As a Go player is when you know you tried, but you're still losing, you're still not playing well.
right.
And I think I especially felt this more so in Korea because at times you would just be losing for like a week or something. Like I would have like a win percentage of like maybe 20%,
Hmm.
and so I would lose like 8 games, only win two in that week, and that's when you really feel bad, and
Yeah.
you want to win your next game, but you don't look forward to playing your next game,
I
and
know the
like
feeling.
but and every game is so important at that point, right? Because you're just hoping that next game you'll win, and so you focus even harder the next game.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you get a bigger disappointment.
Hmm.
But in the end, I think the best mindset is just to treat every game the same way, and always play your best
Right.
when you can. Um, so every time the disappointment will always be the same. The award is always the same,
Mm.
and that's when you can play the most consistently, and produce your best work on the Go board.
That's pretty interesting because yeah, I've definitely felt that at Go Congress or just even online where if I hit a losing streak, then the pressure mounts over and over, and you're like, okay, this has to be the one, and then you put yourself in like such a strange headspace, or just you're putting so much pressure on yourself that you're like, it
Hmm.
it stopped for an amateur level when you're just having try. It's just a game. It can really quickly stop being fun. So
Hmm.
but yeah, that's a pretty interesting way of looking at it. I mean, when you review your games after winning or losing, are you what as a professional or just at your level, what are you trying to look for? Is it just a mistake and just say I'm going to learn from this, or is it just a don't do that anymore? Like, what are you learning as a pro at your level?
I think Go is sort of like a thing where the better you get at it, the more control you feel over the game, right?
Right.
Whereas a weak Go player, a beginner, they wouldn't feel, they have control over where the game is headed. Whereas a pro, they always know, oh, here I'm ahead 5 points. After this sequence, I'll be behind 2 points. As the game goes on, they always have control over the game, and it wouldn't just sort of suddenly, oh, I lost the game, right? So the game starts out even, and they are always able to keep this even pace.
Hmm.
That's why I think in the most complicated games, you still have like half point wins, right?
Right.
So as I feel like I'm getting stronger, I feel like I have more control over the game, and I think that's the most difficult part of finding mistakes at this level is when I'm reviewing, I would just look for uh, mistakes that are just sometimes they could be just really I would say big mistakes,
Hmm.
whereas I don't find myself typically making
Mm.
those mistakes. I'm actually not quite worried, but it's those mistakes where I think I can find more improvement upon.
Mm.
Like say I'm ahead by 5 points. Why did I play a bit over aggressive here? I didn't have to make the
Such an
it might have
aggressive
been a
move.
good choice, but if I know for certain that I'm gonna win the game by playing something else, why not play the other move, right?
Yeah, there is that. Yeah, because I would feel that there's less misreads at a pro level than there would be at an amateur level.
Yeah.
First of all, is that true? I mean,
Uh,
very rarely is it going to be like, oh, I didn't read that out.
yeah, not. I don't think so, unless they're under time pressure and they have to play by intuition.
Right.
And sometimes the sequence just, it happens to be so like when everyone plays, even when everyone plays the best move, right? When
Mm,
both players, there has to be a result, right?
right.
Saying a life or death situation, there has to be a result. And both players played the best moves. It's just that I don't think any human can read like 50 sequences later, right?
Right.
So sometimes those mistakes are not really mistakes, right? It just so happens to how the game unfolded to that stage.
Right.
So that's when you start going forward and you look for earlier moves that could have changed like your fate of, this group dying or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the one interesting thing, I talked to Matthew about this, and he said like the one thing he picked away from it was like sometimes it's not necessarily the best move. The thing that he saw from pros was like it's the least risky way to win was what he took away from what he saw how pros reacted with the game. So it's interesting because of the what you're talking with like control and like reading and all these other things like and also I guess your internal feelings that you're bringing into it when you're playing the game, right?
Yeah. And so I do agree the less risk part because um you're always trying to maximize your percentage, I think, in Go. It's really in the end it all becomes like probability, right? We sort of tell ourselves, okay, he's winning by 10 points. There's still some room on the board. He probably has a better chance of winning this game than me, but it's not over yet, right?
Right.
And I think when pro players resign, it's mostly like games where you're almost certain you have no chance.
Mm,
And so, even if I feel there's a chance for me, I'll still go for it. And when I'm winning, I'm thinking that I have a really good chance of winning this game. I should probably play moves that are less risky to not jeopardize my chances,
right.
which are already very good, because I'm ahead, right?
Right.
And so these are, like, if we go back to the review, these are the things that I'm trying to judge that, you know, this move may be a good move, but why not play this move because it's better?
I
And,
see.
and I think these choices are really contextual, right?
Yeah.
So in this game, it might be a good move, but in the other game, where if I'm behind, I should probably play the more aggressive move, right? So that's when it's really hard to. I think the hard part is where you're trying to judge whether a move is a mistake based on the individual game, right? You can't just always say I'm never gonna make this mistake because the context is always different. So
Yeah. That must make it pretty interesting, but pretty frustrating, right? Or is it less frustrating as just like okay, I at least understand what was going on in my mind, sort of like just understanding yourself more.
yeah, I think you you understand the idea before everyone knows when you're ahead you shouldn't play too aggressive, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in the game it's much more difficult, right? And especially when you review the game, it's very hard to analyze sometimes where you made the mistakes. Sometimes it doesn't seem like you made a mistake, but somehow you lost the game.
Right. So the other thing is, there's the common thing that once you become a pro, you don't really have anyone to rely on. But I, when I've talked to one or two people about this, and it's like, well, no, you're still probably relying on one or two people. Do you have anyone you talk to or consult if there's something you don't understand or you want to get a second opinion, or is it mostly still all internal for you?
Mm, personally, I probably do it more independently because it's really hard here where you don't have the really integrated environment to
I
have
see.
lots of strong players, people to speak to around you.
Yeah.
So I tend to look at things from my own perspective.
Mm.
But if I always have the chance, and when you have the chance to consult someone else, I always choose to, right? Because
Yeah.
having a second opinion from someone who's also very strong is pretty useful advice.
Yeah. Yeah, there was an interesting moment. Did you if we met and I just completely forgot you, I apologize. Did you go to this year's Go Congress?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I have not attended Congress for a couple years, I think.
oh, well, I hope you go to one of them sometime soon. But there was an interesting moment because they had Tong Yuling and then the Wang Chen, and they were. Uh, it was interesting because it was before one of the open games, and they were all just looking over a game and just talking about it. It's really interesting to hear them sort of talk about Go at that level. And the one thing that I really took away from it, that the thing that they said that really resonated with me was like they said, okay, here's the position and here's some different outcomes. Like you can go here and there. And one person said, oh well, I don't like it when it feels like that. And the other guy said, well, I think this is better. And then the last thing they said is like, well, I got to just try it out in the game. And I think that's a really interesting approach to it. Um, and I guess it plays to sort of like the flexible aspect of what you're saying. It's all contextual, right? And is it so? I guess to bring it to you, sort of when you see this and it's just something you don't understand, do you just sort of try and play like let's say you're trying to understand one of the openings or how you react to a lot of it or play it. How do you do it? Do you just keep playing that certain opening or trying to force a game into that opening or in that situation where you can understand it or
I think the
what?
best way to understand something you're not familiar with is just to. There's probably two ways to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
I personally would probably look up pro games or of
Right.
a similar opening because that's really where I can see the best possible outcome of this variation, right?
Mm.
Whereas if I played it against other people, if I played against a weaker player, first of all, they might not be able to play the best result,
Mm.
and it could give me like a false sense of oh, I this is actually a good result for me when perhaps my opponent didn't even play the best possible response. And so I always try to go to the pro players and see if this new variation has been played before.
Mm.
And
Do you worry that maybe their approach to the game or their sensibilities are different than yours when you do something like that? Like, oh, well, he likes to do a more aggressive style, so maybe that's what he ended up. Or is it just, well, this is probably the best move, so
I
I should.
think uh, the stylistic differences between players are actually really minimal.
Okay.
So like if we have two pro players play against each other, or
Mm.
actually not play against you, if you have two pro players, sitting beside me
Hmm.
and they're commentating on the same game along with me,
Right.
we would probably agree on 90%, or maybe that's too much, 85%
Okay.
of the moves. You know, like we will be pointing out the same mistakes. Oh, this is good. This is bad. Oh, I expected this move. This.
Right.
But it's really the 10% or 15% that makes the stylistic difference. So in a situation where you could have an equal choice of territory
Hmm.
or thickness, stuff like that, where you don't really see a clear difference of good or bad between the two moves,
Hmm.
that's when a player's preference and stylistic uh you know thing come in. But for most of the game at a high level, most players would agree upon each other, that this is a better move over the other one, say, or this is the best move or the only move in that situation. And
Interesting.
so I'm not that worried about disagreeing with the other players on things like style because that's really a preference.
Right.
But I'm more concerned if I have a disagreement among, you know, in something where I didn't see, right? Like I would think his choice is bad and I think I play the best move.
Hmm.
But in that circumstance, we look at the result, right? If my move turned out to be bad after 10 sequences, I can point and say, hey, I think you're right that maybe I didn't play the best move here.
I see. That's interesting because then that means there's, I guess, in the way of Go or in its moves, there's very little disagreements. I mean, it's very much results based, and you can actually see the result, right?
Yeah, it's very much so, and usually moves where in a local fight, usually there's not that many choices because pros are so strong now that if there's 10 possible choices, they can read 9 of them and say 9 of them are bad, and this is the only choice.
Oh, yeah,
Most of the time that happens. It's only so rarely where I say the 10% or 15% of the time
right.
I have 2 possible choices that are equally, or seem equally good.
Mm,
And they're too complicated to read out or compare. So you just make a stylistic preference. Say, oh, I choose territory here, or I choose thickness, or to fight here.
interesting. Let's see. We're hitting about an hour, so let's. I got one or two more questions, and we can wrap it up after that. Um, First of all, thanks again for doing this. This is really cool and pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
not a problem.
Hopefully, I'm not grilling you too hard. Um, what's next for you, go-wise, in terms of what you want to do in the next year or 2 years or 5 years, or even just events that you want to attend and do?
Um, because of college, I'm attending college, and I'm in my last year right now. So I wasn't able to do much during my college years, and I'm hoping after I graduate, I will perhaps have some free time to, attend tournaments,
Mm-hmm.
attend events, and really to, put myself more into the go world.
Mm,
Because I felt like in the past couple of years, I've really uh, stepped away from these things to just
right.
focus more on school. But I think it will be, I would like to enjoy myself again, in the Go world by playing games, attending events, talking to friends.
Right.
And I think that's the most enjoyable part of playing Go.
And do you attend any clubs locally or do any local events in terms of?
Um, I attended some events in the this year, actually quite a few, some tournaments mainly, but also there was a Boston, the Sankei Cup event.
Right.
I attended that one, and there's gonna be I attended some international college and university tournament in Taiwan,
Mm.
and luckily they'll be hosting it actually next year in Toronto at my school.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'll have the opportunity to help them out with that, and I'm really excited for that opportunity.
And I guess another interesting question in terms of, I guess, the future. I mean, how would you? It's as an amateur, it's easy to gauge improvement sometimes or gauge strength. You can say, well, I was 2Q 5 years ago, and now I'm 1 dan this year. I'm 1 dan this year. I want to be 5 dan in 5 years. We'll say that. That sounds really realistic. What when you are at your rank or at that, how do you gauge progress or how do you gauge something, and what is it that you might be looking for when you're at the strength or level that you're at?
I think at this point it's more there's not really tests. Whereas maybe if you're weaker, you can do like life and death and see. Sometimes the book tell you if I can do solve all these problems, you're definitely at a 3 dan level or something like that.
Right.
Whereas now it's much harder for
Mm,
me, and so most of it would just come from results, right? From playing online
mm,
or playing in tournaments, and especially if you have like people who you have played with before. Say, I remember before a couple years back, I would be losing to some players before,
right.
but then I figure now I play them much more often. I find that I win most of my games, and so that's when you're definitely improving, right? If you have someone, as like a meter for you to gauge yourself.
That's definitely true. The way I definitely have gauged my progress sometimes is just who can I beat at my Go club. Like I used to lose to this guy all the time. At least now I can win 50-50 against him. And
Yeah, I think it's a good way
yeah,
because unless they're getting worse, which is pretty unlikely.
Yeah. But that's cool now. Like the whole world is your Go club. You can play against anyone and sort of be able to gauge your progress.
And I think it's really good to have an open online system for you to play against so many players like Taijin. And I think a big part of gauging my own strength would be to play on Taijin and see how many games I'll win in 10-game streak or something like that.
Interesting. And is that basically where you play most of the time? Taijum now?
Yeah, Taijin, I would say.
That's cool. I think, yeah, cool. Well, definitely thanks again for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best of luck. And if you ever want to hang out and talk again, I mean, hopefully you had a fun time talking with me about this stuff.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
enjoyed it too.
I find it's really rare to see. Do you get a chance to do this where talk to like what do you talk with another like strong player about? Is it just not even about Go, or do you still?
Mm, more so about Go, of course, but if I talk with other strong players, you can talk about anything.
Right.
You know, playing Go is different than talking about Go. So
Yeah.
talk is just all talk until you have to play, right? So you don't have to. And also you don't talking about Go all the time with another Go player is kind of boring too, right? So
Yeah,
you
that's
always
true.
just chat about different stuff.
That's pretty cool. Well, thanks again. And best of luck. So thank you, William, and bye, guys.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.